know. I'm probably going to go to bed at like, I don't know, 9:30, but I don't want to talk to you.
Absolutely savage way to start the episode. Thank
It's
you
not that I
so
don't want to talk
much.
to you, it's that I don't want to talk to anyone right now.
Well, I get that. She's just an introverted bitch.
Yes, at all times.
At all times. Anyway, you heard it here first, folks. Shrimp is not going to go on a tangent this episode. And we're going to keep it a tight ship.
Well, I suppose I can't promise. I can't promise that because sometimes my tangents make sense to the content that we are discussing.
True. I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will.
So hello, friends, and
Hello.
welcome back to Sinister Sisters. I'm Kat. This is Shrimp. She's
Hello.
our tangent queen.
Hello.
And we are the hostesses with the mostesses
Host I.
information on dark topics.
Host I with the most I.
Exactly. But mostly just hyperfixation information on sad things.
Yeah. We
Anyway.
can't all have fun hobbies.
Some of us have to have sad hobbies.
Yeah. Makes the world go round, doesn't it?
It does. It does indeed. Anyway. I don't know if this made the final cut of the episode like a week or two ago, but we were talking about the Dear Canada books. Which, or maybe it wasn't even in an episode, maybe we were just talking about it, but it triggered my memory of my favorite Dear Canada book in the series on the Halifax Explosion. So that is what we're going to be talking about today.
I can actually remember reading that one too, so.
Yeah.
Like, I can physically remember reading it. Like, you know how
really good.
You've read books and you're like, oh, I've read Harry Potter, I've read The Hunger Games, whatever, but you don't actually physically necessarily remember the active time that you were reading it. I remember reading the Halifax Explosion Dear Canada book.
I can remember the images in my head.
Yeah.
From that book, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, some people don't have those.
Yeah.
Here's my first tangent of the episode.
That's weird. Oh, I was about to go on a tangent too.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people do this, but when I read, usually the scenes that I'm creating in my head are of places I've been before, modified to fit what's going on in the book.
That's weird.
So I've never been to Halifax, so I don't know what Halifax looks like. So when I was reading the book, I reimagined where we used to live when we lived in England as a place where an explosion happened.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
My brain just invents it from scratch.
Yeah. No, it's usually that town actually that I use as and that house that we lived in. I don't know what that says about me and tied to cool memories of childhood. Yeah.
Oh.
The brick house that we lived in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
weird.
That house didn't have a basement, but it has a basement in my mind if the person in the book's house has a basement.
That's weird. I don't like that.
Yeah, pretty much always. Or sometimes the layout of it will become an apartment.
I don't like
Very
that.
strange. Yeah. I've never explained that to anybody else, I don't think. I just assumed that's how other people thought of things in their heads.
No, my brain
not.
invents the place.
Okay.
Based on the description. And it's always kind of a little weird. It never really makes sense because books aren't linear, right? The descriptions of the places aren't linear.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird. You know in Coraline when she and the cat are walking and the world just ends? That's how.
Oh. But I it's when you're in a video game and the world was damaged.
Yeah, and Minecraft
Yeah.
hasn't, like, loaded in yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like that. That, like, oh, we know what's down this street, but
Hmm.
at the end of this street, I don't know what it is, and so it's just nothing.
Interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, let us know, friends, how you imagine the scenes in books in your head when you read them.
And if you
Because,
don't
yeah,
imagine anything, tell us that too. And
yeah,
do you enjoy reading?
yeah. See, I always thought, like, Skinny Boy doesn't like to read, and I always thought that it was because he couldn't, like, imagine the scenes.
Mhm.
Because he's, like, a movie guy, so I
Yeah.
just was kind of, like, judging him, being like, oh, obviously he likes his entertainment spoon-fed to him as being a
Rude.
snob. So then I I asked him about it once, and he was like, "No, I literally get distracted by my imagination when I'm reading." And he's like, "I don't actually read. I like read one page and then go down like the rabbit hole,"
Oh.
which is why he can read like coding stuff all day long for his job, because that's dry and boring and there's no imagination to go down.
Yeah.
So, oh, I forgot to turn my light on. Oh,
Blinding.
oh, God.
Ooh,
Oh,
I'm blinded by the lights.
could put on the right color setting. There we go. That'll probably do. Sorry, friends. Probably couldn't even see my beautiful face. Just kidding. Most of you, I'm pretty sure, listen to this. Anyway, 10 minutes in, let's get started.
Woo!
So, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Halifax explosion. It remains one of the deadliest disasters in Canadian history. And for a long time, it was the deadliest man made explosion up until like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Sorry,
Yeah.
Nagasaki happened. So,
Jeez.
yeah, like they even, the little boy bomb that they dropped on whichever, I'm not sure which one was which, they, when they reported on it, they compared it to the Halifax explosion bomb. So
Jeez.
it was like big thing. So
Yeah.
on December the 6th in 1917 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is on the eastern coast of Canada, two ships collided in the harbor, one of which was carrying highly explosive materials. The Mont Blanc, loaded with volatile cargo that included benzol, TNT, picric acid, caught fire after the collision in the harbor. The fire quickly spread and ignited the cargo, resulting in a massive explosion. The explosion had really devastating consequences, which we'll get into. So, but basically, it was awful. A lot of loss of
Mhm.
life and a massive amount of damage to the city. So we'll rewind a little bit for a little bit of background. So 1917 was sort of towards the tail end of this First World War. During World War One, Halifax had become a major international port and was used as a major shipment point for war supplies, troop ships heading to Europe, and also hospital ships bringing wounded soldiers back to North America. These factors drove a major military, industrial, and residential expansion to the city. Halifax and Dartmouth, which is technically a separate city, but it's like just across the bridge, basically. I Google Maps it, and it's like 12 minutes downtown to downtown. So it's one of those situations where it's like a city, but they're kind of two separate cities, but they're kind of the same city. Anyway, whatever. So the two cities, Halifax and Dartmouth, had thrived during times of war. The harbour was one of the Royal Navy's most important bases in North America and was home to privateers who attacked the British Empire's enemies during the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, and the War of 1812. Just before World War One, the Canadian government began to develop the harbour and the waterfront facilities. The outbreak of the First World War brought Halifax back to prominence. because the Royal Canadian Navy had basically no seaworthy ships, they're just a baby. Um, the Royal Navy assumed responsibility for maintaining Atlantic trade routes by readopting Halifax as like the base of its North American operations. The Canadian Navy, I feel like, still is pretty slim,
Yeah,
slimmed down,
just little
just baby.
guys.
Yeah,
Because like nobody tries to fight Canada.
no,
We're just kind
just
of
the
over here.
Americans, really.
Yeah, but who are America, It's just
Savage.
like, well, that hasn't happened since like the War of 1812.
Yeah,
And Canada burnt down the White House.
the British burnt down the White House, but yes, sure.
The Canadians.
Yeah, the Canadians say that, but like, didn't Canada wasn't really like a thing, you know?
Oh my god, don't say that to
Anyway,
them.
I do.
You tell a Canadian that they've never won a war, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, they're very. Canada has been very helpful
Mm-hmm.
in many major wars
Yes.
since like the 1600s,
Yes.
including Indigenous Canadians,
Including.
all the way back to that time.
Yes. We're shitting on
But yes,
Canada
you're right.
currently,
Canada,
but we love Canada. Very good time.
we do love Canada. And Canada
Gave us.
is, you're right, very neutral in a lot of ways
Yeah.
and very like respected. So there
Yeah.
isn't much need to have this massive military
Just kind of
like
vibing over
America
here.
has. Yeah. We're just chilling. We're smoking the good. We're
Eating
you know,
poutine. Thank you,
going to
Canada God. God Canada. Daddy Trudeau.
Ki-
Whoever the fuck. Poutine. Thank you.
Trudeau. That's a Quebecois dish.
That's what.
So actually we have to thank the French for that. So thanks, Quebec.
Thanks, Quebec. I suppose we'll
No, it's
keep ya.
Quebec.
Quebec.
Just another
Bonjour.
quick, just another quick tangent of the day. I've been doing French lessons on Duolingo, and I am mind blown by how many small French phrases our parents have sprinkled into their vocabulary over the
Like what?
years. Like, aujourd'hui, Dad always says that.
Or should we? Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was like German for hurry up because that's how he always says it.
Yeah.
It's French for today. Dad's been being sarcastic to us in fucking French.
Just dad things.
And pourquoi?
That's pardon.
No, it means why.
Oh. Hello?
Pardon. Excusez-moi.
But they say it as like pardon. Pourquoi? What? No, they don't.
No, they don't. They say it as why.
I'm making shit up right now.
Anyway, let's get back on task. So,
Okay.
the Royal Canadian Navy had a very small fleet, so the Royal Navy took over control. And by 1917, there was a growing Canadian naval fleet in Halifax.
Yay.
It included patrol ships, tugboats, and minesweepers. Halifax also, around this time, constructed a new military hospital to care for soldiers returning from Europe.
Nice.
Also, I think probably good to remember as to why Halifax was used as the base is because it is one of the most easternly cities in North America, because Newfoundland and Labrador was not incorporated into Canada until after the Second World War. So
Just vibing over there by themselves.
just vibing, kissing fish, and drinking. We love Newfies.
I thought John Cabot found them because now they have no cod.
Huh?
Because Newfoundland, was it Newfoundland? John Cabot went
I don't
swimming.
know.
Went in his
I don't know.
boat and then fished a bunch of fish, and now there's a cod crisis.
I don't know, man. They do the screeching. They screech you in at Newfoundland.
Screech?
Well, you have to, yeah. You have to, like, drink the really strong whiskey and then kiss the fish.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Oh.
Anyway, back on topic. The Norwegian ship, the SS Imo?
Emo.
I meant to look that up. Let me just Google it. Imo. Okay. And if I'm saying this wrong, friends, let's blame Google.
Goog.
So, the Norwegian ship, the SS Imo, was en route to New York to take on relief supplies that were headed for Belgium. The ship arrived in Halifax on December the 3rd for a neutral inspection and spent 2 days at the Bedford Basin awaiting refueling supplies. IMO had been given clearance to leave the port on the 5th of December, but IMO's departure was delayed because fuel loading was not completed until after the anti-submarine nets had been raised in the harbor for the night. So the vessel could not depart until the next morning. The French cargo ship, the SS Mont Blanc, arrived from New York late on the 5th of December. The vessel was fully loaded with explosives, TNT and picric acid, highly flammable fueled benzol, and gun cotton. SS Mont Blanc was intended to join a slow convoy gathering in the Bedford Basin, which was preparing to depart for Europe. It was too late to enter the harbor before the nets were raised, and so they had to wait outside until after the night.
I don't know how you hating from outside of the club. You can't even get in.
Exactly. Ships carrying dangerous cargo were previously not allowed in the harbor before the war, but the risks posed by German submarines had resulted in a relaxation of the rules and regulations so that they were allowed into the harbor at this time.
Rip.
Navigating into or out of the Bedford Basin required passage through a strait called the Narrows, which, as you can imagine, was very wide. JK, super narrow.
JK, that's sarcasm, guys.
Ships were expected to keep close to the side of the channel situated on their starboard or the right side of the pass.
Starboard.
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 Hard to starboard!
And they were to pass oncoming vessels port to port, so
Port!
keeping them on their left side. Basically driving as you do in North America, but with your boat. Which I actually think is just the boat rules anyway, but whatever. Ships were restricted to a speed of 5 knots, which is about 9.3 kilometers an hour, or just short of 6 miles per hour.
Very slow.
Very slow, just ambling, so you've got time to pass and not crash, basically. IMO was granted clearance to leave the Bedford Basin by signals from the guard ship HMCS Acadia at approximately 7:30 on the morning of the 6th of December. The ship entered the Narrows well above the harbour speed limit in an attempt to make up for the delay experienced by loading the coal the night before. IMO met American tramp steamer the SS Clara being piloted up the wrong side of the harbour, so the pilots, I guess, is what you call someone who navigates a ship, by the way, a pilot. The pilots agreed to pass starboard to starboard, aka on the opposite sides of how they were supposed to be passing each other.
Oh my god.
Soon afterwards, IMO was forced to head even further towards the Dartmouth shore after passing the tugboat Stella Maris, which was traveling up the harbour to the Bedford Basin near mid-channel. So, not picking a lane, just doing what they want. Horatio Brennan, who was the captain of the Stella Maris, saw IMO approaching at excessive speed and orders his ship closer to the western shore to avoid an accident. Francis Mackey, who was an experienced harbour pilot, had boarded the Mont Blanc on the evening of the 5th of December, 1917. He had asked about special protections, such as a guard ship, given the Mont Blanc's cargo, but no protections were put in place. Mont Blanc started moving at 6:30 a.m. on 6th of December and was the second ship to enter the harbor after the anti-submarine nets had lowered or been opened for the day. Mont Blanc headed towards the Bedford Basin on the Dartmouth side of the harbor, where they were supposed to be. Mackey kept his eye on the ferry traffic between Halifax and Dartmouth and other small boats in the area. He first spotted Imo when she was about 1.2 kilometers or 0.75 miles away and became concerned as her path appeared to be heading towards his ship's starboard side, as if to cut him off. Again, on the wrong side. Mackey gave a short blast of his ship's signal whistle to indicate that he had the right of way, but was met with 2 short blasts from Imo, indicating that the approaching vessel would not yield its position.
They're playing chicken.
They're playing chicken. Yeah. The captain ordered Mont Blanc to halt her engines and angle slightly starboard, closer to the Dartmouth side of the Narrows. He let out another single blast of his whistle, hoping the other vessel would likewise move starboard, but was again met with a double blast. Sailors on nearby ships heard a series of signals, and realizing that a collision was imminent, gathered to watch as Imo bore down on the Mont Blanc. Both ships had cut their engines by this point, but their momentum carried them forward towards each other at a slow speed. Unable to ground his ship for fear of a shock that would set off his explosive cargo, Mackey ordered Mont Blanc to steer hard to port, starboard helm, and cross the bow of the Imo in a last-second bid to avoid collision. The 2 ships were almost parallel to each other when Imo suddenly let out 3 signal blasts, indicating that the ship was reversing its engines. The combination of the cargoless ship's height in the water and the transverse thrust of her right-hand propeller caused the ship's head to swing into the Mont Blanc. Imo's prow pushed into the number 1 hold of the Mont Blanc on her starboard side. The collision occurred at 8:45 a.m. The damage to the Mont Blanc was not severe, but barrels of deck cargo toppled and broke open. This flooded the deck with benzol that quickly flowed into the hold. As Imo's engines kicked in, she disengaged, which created sparks inside Mont Blanc's hull. These ignited the vapors from the benzol. A fire started at the waterline and traveled quickly up the side of the ship. Surrounded by thick black smoke, and fearing that the ship would explode almost immediately, the captain of the Mont Blanc ordered the crew to abandon ship. A growing number of Halifax citizens gathered on the street or stood at the windows of their homes or businesses to watch the spectacular fire. The frantic crew of the Mont Blanc shouted from their 2 lifeboats to some of the other vessels that their ship was about to explode, but they could not be heard above the noise and confusion. As their lifeboats made their way across the harbor to the Dartmouth shore, the abandoned ship continued to drift and beached herself at Pier 6 near the foot of Richmond Street. Towing 2 scows at the time of the collision, the Stella Maris responded immediately to the fire, anchoring the barges and steaming back towards Pier 6 to spray the burning ship with their fire hose. The tug's captain, Horatio Brennan, and his crew realized that the fire was too intense for their single hose and backed off from the burning Mont Blanc. They were approached by a whaler from HMS Highflyer and later a steam pinnacle belonging to HMCS Niobe. Captain Brennan and Albert Mattison of the Niobe agreed to secure a line to the French ship's stern so as to pull it away from the pier to avoid setting the pier on fire. The 5-inch rope initially produced was deemed too small, and orders for a 10-inch rope came down. At this point, the blast occurred. So at 9:04 a.m., the out-of-control fire on board Mont Blanc set off her cargo of high explosives. The ship was completely blown apart, and a powerful blast wave radiated from the explosion at initially more than 1,000 meters per second. Temperatures of 5,000 degrees Celsius, which is 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and pressures of thousands of atmospheres accompanied the moment of detonation at the center of the explosion. white-hot shards of iron fell upon Halifax and Dartmouth. The Mont Blanc's forward 99mm gun, which is huge, landed approximately 5.6 kilometers north of the explosion site, which is 3.5 miles, while its barrel, the barrel of the gun bent and was half torn away by the force of the blast. The shank of the anchor, weighing half a ton, landed 3.2 kilometers, or 2 miles south, at Armdale. So, like, an anchor is very heavy, and its whole point is to not move. So the fact that it 3 kilometers,
went 2 miles,
yeah, crazy. A huge cloud of white smoke rose to at least 300. Nope, can't read. A cloud of white smoke rose to at least 3,600 meters, which is almost 12,000 feet. The blast was felt as far away as Cape Breton, which is 207 kilometers, and in Prince Edward Island, 180 kilometers away. An area of over 1.6 square kilometers, which is 400 acres, which is so much, was completely destroyed by the explosion, and the harbor floor was momentarily exposed by the volume of water that was displaced. A tsunami was formed by water surging in to fill the void, which rose to as high as 18 meters above the high water mark on the Halifax side of the harbor. 18 meters is 60 feet. So, like a 6-story building, basically.
Jeez.
Ish. Imo was carried onto the shore at the Dartmouth side of the harbor by the tsunami. The blast killed all but one of the people on the whaling ship, everyone on the Pinnacle, and 21 of the 26 men on the Stella Maris. All but one of the Mont Blanc crew members survived. Over 1,600 people were killed instantly, and 9,000 people were injured, more than 300 of whom later died. Every building within a 2.6 kilometer radius, which is 1.6 miles, over 12,000 buildings in total were destroyed or badly damaged. Hundreds of people who had been watching the fire from their homes were blinded when the blast wave shattered the windows in front of them. Overturned stoves and lamps started fires throughout Halifax, particularly in the north end of the city, where entire city blocks burned, trapping residents inside their homes.
I watched a video about this event happening, and in that video, the person said that the crew from the Mont Blanc, the 2 men, knew that it was going to explode, and they saw this indigenous lady standing outside of a building or her house or something like that, holding her baby and just kind of watching. And apparently, these men went up and said, like, tried to get her to move, like, you can't stand here because this is going to explode and it's going to be bad. And she didn't understand them because she didn't speak English, and so they took her baby. They grabbed the baby out of her arms and went sprinting away with the baby, and of course she followed them because that's her baby, right? And she lived.
Oh.
And the baby lived. Yeah.
Shit.
Quick thinking,
I don't know why.
right?
Yeah, and I don't know why my first thought was, oh, she just let them kidnap her baby.
No.
I was like,
no, she went sprinting after them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's lots of really, like, beautiful stories.
Yeah.
Like, out of this. Obviously, it's a horrible thing to have happened, but, like, the human, like, how humans
support
then look after each other afterwards gives you some hope.
Yeah.
So a firefighter named Billy Wells, who was thrown away from the explosion and had his clothes torn off of his body, described the devastation survivors faced. He said, quote, "The sight was awful, with people hanging out of windows, some of their heads missing, some thrown onto the overhead telegraph wires. He was the only member of the 8-man crew of the fire engine Patricia to survive. Large brick and stone factories near Pier 6, such as the Acadia Sugar Refinery, disappeared into unrecognizable heaps of rubble, killing most of their workers. The Nova Scotia cotton mill, which was located 1.5 kilometers, or just short of 1 mile away from the blast, was destroyed by fire and the collapse of its concrete floors. The Royal Naval College of Canada building was badly damaged, and several cadets and instructors were injured. The Richmond rail yards and station were destroyed, killing 55 railway workers and destroying and damaging over 500 rail cars. The North Street station, which was one of the busiest in Canada, was badly damaged. The death toll actually could have been even higher if not for the, courageousness of a railway dispatcher called Patrick Vincent Coleman, or Vince Coleman, who was operating at the rail yard about 230 meters from Pier 6 when the explosion occurred. He and his co-worker learned of the dangerous cargo aboard the burning Mont Blanc from a sailor and began to flee. Coleman remembered that there was an incoming passenger train from St. John, New Brunswick that was due to arrive at the rail yard within minutes. He returned to his post alone and continued to send out urgent telegraph messages to stop the train. Several variations of the message have been reported, but among them is this one from the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, which says, "Hold up the train. Ammunition ship afire in the harbor, making for Pier 6 and will explode. Guess this will be my last message. Goodbye, boys." Coleman's message was responsible for bringing all incoming trains around Halifax to a halt. It was heard by other stations along the Intercolonial Railway, helping railway officials to respond immediately. Passenger train number 10, the overnight train from St. John, is believed to have heeded the warning and stopped a safe distance from the blast at Rockingham, saving the lives of 300 railway passengers. Coleman was killed at his post.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. After the explosion, the initial rescue efforts were led by the surviving people, neighbors, co-workers, volunteers, who worked tirelessly to pull victims from the debris and rubble of buildings. They were soon joined by policemen, firefighters, and military personnel who had arrived to assist. Vehicles of all kinds, including cars, trucks, delivery wagons, basically anything they could find, were utilized to transport the wounded to hospitals. However, the influx of victims quickly overwhelmed the city's medical facilities. Firefighters played a crucial role in responding to the disaster. Some of them were rushed to the Mont Blanc ship to extinguish the fire before the explosion occurred. After the blast, firefighters from Halifax and neighboring areas arrived to provide assistance. Halifax Fire Department's West Street Station 2, with the crew of the Patricia that I mentioned earlier, were among the first to arrive at the scene, and that was actually the first motorized fire engine in Canada. Rescue parties from Royal Navy cruisers, including the HMS Highflyer, HMS Changuinola, HMS Knight Templar, HMS Calgarian, were sent ashore to provide aid. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter USRC Morill also dispatched a rescue party. The American cruiser USS Tacoma and armed merchant cruiser USS von Steuben altered their courses to assist with the rescue efforts. The American steamship Old Colony, docked in Halifax for repairs, was quickly converted into a hospital ship to accommodate the wounded. Amid the chaos, there were fears of a second explosion, leading to evacuation orders and confusion. However, many rescuers and naval personnel continued to do their work undeterred. Surviving railway workers in the rail yards also joined the rescue efforts, pulling people from the harbour and under debris. The overnight train from St. John, which was near the city at the time of the explosion, continued to Richmond, using emergency tools from the train to rescue trapped individuals. Around noon, the Halifax Relief Commission was formed, led by Lieutenant Governor McCallum Grant. The commission organized medical relief, transportation, food, shelter, and covered medical and funeral costs for the victims. The YMCA and other community facilities were quickly converted into emergency hospitals, with medical students providing care. Rescue trains were dispatched from various locations in Atlantic Canada and the northeastern United States, bringing in medical personnel, supplies, and aid. The relief efforts faced additional challenges the following day due to a blizzard that covered Halifax in heavy snow. I think 18 inches is what they got overnight.
Jeez.
So trains were delayed and communication lines were disrupted. Despite these difficulties, the rescue committees persevered, battling fires throughout the city and continuing their search for survivors once the storms subsided. Overall, the immediate response to the explosion involved a remarkable mobilization of resources, with individuals from kind of all over the place coming together to provide aid, rescue survivors, and support the wounded. The exact number of casualties remains unknown, but the Halifax Explosion Remembrance Book, which is like an official database, has identified 1,782 victims. Immediate deaths from the blast, tsunami, and collapsing buildings numbered around 1,600, but the last body wasn't discovered until the summer of 1919, so like a year and a half later. In addition, approximately 9,000 people were injured. The devastation caused by the explosion was extensive. Over 1,600 homes were destroyed, and another 12,000 were damaged. This left around 6,000 people without homes, and 25,000 people lacking with proper shelter. The industrial sector of the city was heavily impacted, with many workers among the casualties, and the dockyard suffering severe damages. After the disaster, a mortuary committee was formed at the Halifax City Hall. The Chebucto Road School was converted into a central morgue, where bodies were brought by trucks and wagons. The Royal Canadian Engineers played a crucial role in repairing and adapting the school's basement for this somber purpose. To manage the growing number of deceased, a system was implemented that was based on the one developed after the Titanic disaster in 1912, which Halifax also kind of took care of.
Yeah.
The explosion caused various types of injuries, some of which were permanent. Flying glass and the explosion's flash resulted in around 5,900 reported eye injuries. 41 individuals are reported to have permanently lost their sight.
Oof.
Yeah. And it's not something that you think about, right? Like, I think if there was a big fire outside my house too, I would go and stand at the window to look out.
Me too.
But you wouldn't, like, of course, glass would break, and of course it would fly into people's eyes. But I never thought of it.
No, me neither.
Financially, the damage amounted to an estimated 35 million Canadian dollars, which is equivalent to $627 million today.
Holy.
Relief funds were raised from various sources, including $18 million from the federal government, over $4 million from the British government, and $750,000 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That's like a very really random one. Are they?
Well, they're really close, yeah.
Oh.
Nova Scotia is pretty far south as far as like Canada goes. And it's very close to Maine, like probably less than a few hundred kilometers away from Maine by the sea. Yeah. Because
nice.
New Brunswick is attached, right? They have a land border between New Brunswick and Maine.
New Brunswick. Yes. No?
Yes.
I thought New Brunswick was an island.
No.
Oh, that's Cape Breton, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is actually in Nova Scotia.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of, though, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I just googled a map. I'm looking at it now.
Mm.
Oh, they are really close.
Yeah. Do you remember having to color the provinces in like history class or whatever?
Yeah.
What a nightmare.
Freaking having to color Nunavut.
Yeah. Northern Canada's full of, for those who maybe don't know, full of tiny little islands.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to color in the lines of all of them. But some of them
Yeah.
are like literally the size of your pencil crayon when you're coloring them on like a paper map.
Yeah.
And you had to fit like the word Saskatchewan in the space. But that's a long word.
Yeah.
You have to write so
Yeah.
small. Anyway,
It was a
that's a
whole
very
thing.
Canadian. I've seen like TikToks and stuff about it.
Yeah, me
It's a
too.
very universal Canadian experience, I think, of
Uh-huh.
people of our age.
Uh-huh.
So, the neighboring town of Dartmouth also suffered pretty significant damage. It was less densely populated than Halifax, but it did still experience casualties, with an estimated 100 deaths reported on the Dartmouth side. Buildings such as the Oland Brewery and parts of Star Manufacturing Company were damaged or destroyed. The Mi'kmaq settlements in and around the Bedford Basin, particularly at Turtle Grove, faced profound devastation. These communities were located opposite Pier 9 on the Halifax side of the harbour. Although there are incomplete records from this time period which make it difficult to determine the exact death toll, 9 bodies were recovered from Turtle Grove, and there were 11 known survivors. The Department of Indian Affairs, which is what it was called then, it's now called Indigenous in Northern Affairs, I believe, had been pressuring the Mi'kmaq people to relocate prior to the explosion. The destruction caused by the blast and subsequent tsunami left Turtle Grove in ruins, leading to it not being feasible to be reconstructed. Survivors from the Mi'kmaq Indigenous nation faced really poor conditions. They were actually segregated in the like survivors areas, and not looked after properly. So eventually dispersed elsewhere throughout Nova Scotia. Kind of on brand, I would say, for the federal government's treatment of Indigenous people at that time, and before that, and also after that. But yeah, they wanted the like INAC wanted them to move to a reserve and move them out of the harbor, but that was their traditional territory.
Yep.
Also of note was the predominantly black community of Africville, which was situated on the southern shores of the Bedford Basin. It escaped direct impact of the blast because it was kind of raised up in the south, so there wasn't like the same amount of fire damage or like direct building collapse. However, because this neighborhood was, this article put it, full of modest homes, I think it was a lower income neighborhood, they suffered pretty severe damage, nonetheless, of not being in the main sort of like blast zone.
Yeah.
Despite paying city taxes, the community had long endured systemic racism, including the lack of police or fire protection, water mains, and sewer lines. Africville received limited funds for relief and did not benefit from the reconstruction efforts that other parts of the city received. While records indicate the death of 5 residents, the community's struggles persisted long after the explosion. Again, kind of on brand for treatment of BIPOC folks at that time, but really disgusting looking at it from now.
Yeah.
How can you not help people rebuild their homes?
Yeah.
After the explosion, there was widespread initial belief that the explosion was a deliberate German attack.
Oof.
Yeah, which of course would have been a fear at that time.
Yes.
The Halifax Herald fueled this belief by publishing reports that Germans had mocked the victims of the explosions. Suspicion even fell on John Johansen, the Norwegian helmsman of the IMO, who was injured in the blast. He was arrested on suspicion of being a German spy based on a letter found on him, which was believed to be written in German. However, it was later discovered that the letter was actually written in Norwegian, because he was Norwegian.
Norwegian, yeah.
German survivors in Halifax were rounded up and imprisoned, but as the true cause of the explosion became known, the fear subsided, although some rumors still persisted that there was some German involvement.
Rude.
A judicial... Right, yeah.
It's very othering. This man speaks a language that isn't English. He must be a German.
Yes. Yeah, lots of othering going on in this story.
Yes.
A judicial inquiry, which was known as the Wreck Commissioner's Inquiry, was established to investigate the collision and determine its causes. The inquiry commenced on December 13th of 1917, so pretty quickly. They kind of got their shit together really fast, within a week. With Justice Arthur Drysdale presiding over the proceedings. The inquiry's report, issued on February 4th of 1918, placed the blame for the collision on the captain of the Mont Blanc, the ship's pilot, and Commander F. Evan Wyatt of the Royal Canadian Navy. Drysdale agreed with the opinion that the Mont Blanc bore the sole responsibility for avoiding the collision due to its dangerous cargo. The decision surprised many, as it was expecting that the IMO would be held responsible for being on the wrong side of the channel.
Yeah.
Manslaughter and criminal negligence charges were initially brought against the three men, but were later dismissed due to lack of evidence.
Why wouldn't it be the other guy's fault? The one driving on the wrong side of the road.
Nova Scotia, at the time, had some anti-French sentiment. And the Mont Blanc was a French ship, so that's the rumored
conspiracy
reason.
Theory.
Yeah, which also kind of checks out.
Yeah, but it's also dumb because if you have organized routes and sides of the road you're supposed to be on, and then you're just not, and then you're just refusing to be on that side when the other boat is like, bitch, you're on my side, then it's like, how is that?
It's like if you were to head-on car collision.
Yeah.
It's always the person who's on the wrong side of the road's fault.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Justice Drysdale also presided over subsequent civil litigation trials between the ship's owners, where damages were sought. His decision, that came on April 27th of 1918, again placed full blame on the Mont Blanc. However, it also kind of seems like this guy had maybe a bit of a vendetta, and why was he allowed to preside over both trials? I don't know, but probably a lack of judges, I'm sure. Whatever.
Probably, yeah.
Subsequent appeals to the Supreme Court of Canada and the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council in London concluded that both Mont Blanc and the IMO were equally at fault for the navigational errors that led to the collision. No individual or party was ever actually convicted or successfully prosecuted for any of the actions leading to the disaster. I don't know. There must have been some more to it than what's maybe publicly available, but that seems a little wild.
To me, it feels like the Mont Blanc shouldn't. If they were doing everything that they were supposed to be doing, then why would they have any fault in it at all? But
I guess just maybe they should have done more to avoid a collision and not just assume that the other people were going to move over, but
I guess.
I mean,
it was literally the IMO that hit them anyways, though.
Yeah.
They were on the wrong side of the road, and they, hit them because they were turning turning their thingy backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe if they just didn't do that, then...
Maybe if they just drove on the right side of the road and at the speed limit, then we would all be fine.
Yeah, and didn't try to go backwards.
Yeah. Anyway. The legacy of the Halifax explosion is pretty profound. It serves as a testament to the resilience and determination of the people of Halifax, who worked together really hard to rebuild the city. It also sparked advancements in medical and emergency response practices. So, immediately following the explosion, efforts were made to clear debris, repair buildings, and provide temporary housing for the homeless survivors. However, by late January of 1918, approximately 5,000 people were still without shelter. To address this, a reconstruction committee led by Colonel Robert Lowe constructed 832 new housing units, furnished through the Massachusetts Halifax Relief Fund. Train services gradually resumed, with partial service starting on December 7th from a temporary rail terminal and full service resuming on December 9th when tracks were cleared and the North Street station reopened. So, like, very speedy fast. They got the shit together.
Yeah.
21st century crews could never.
Right.
The Canadian Government Railways formed a special unit to repair the railway yards, rebuild railway piers, and restore the naval dockyard. Most piers were operational by late December and fully repaired by January. So, like,
Jeez.
snappy.
That is very speedy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of the structures, especially the houses that were damaged, were built of wood, which does go up much faster than other materials.
Yeah.
And that's also the why it came down more quickly.
Yeah.
But I don't think the damage wasn't to like these big heavy structures that needed to be cleared. It was like 2x4s and whatever. Anyway. The North End neighborhood of Richmond, which suffered the most damage, was approached as an opportunity for redevelopment. Town planner Thomas Adams and the architectural firm Ross and MacDonald were enlisted to design a new housing plan inspired by the Victorian Garden City movement. They designed 326 homes facing tree-lined boulevards, constructed with fireproof material called hydrostone.
Nice.
The first homes were occupied by March of 1919, and the Prince of Wales visited the site in August, witnessing the progress and the kindness shown to the affected community. The Hydrostone neighborhood became a thriving community with homes, businesses, and parks, contributing to the revitalization of the north end of Halifax. In contrast, Africville, which we mentioned earlier, which was an equally impoverished neighborhood, was excluded from these reconstruction efforts because racism.
Rude.
The Halifax Dockyard and HMCS Niobe required extensive rebuilding, but all Royal Canadian Navy minesweepers and patrol boats remained undamaged. The government pledged to cooperate in reconstructing the port of Halifax, as it was crucial to the Empire. Despite initial expectations that the port would be non-operational for months, a convoy departed on December 11th, and dockyard operations resumed before Christmas.
Jeez.
Yeah, like, very snappy. The disaster also led to significant advancements in eye care, as the numerous eye injuries promoted a better understanding of how to treat damaged eyes. Halifax became known internationally as a center for the care of the blind, thanks to efforts of the newly established Canadian Institute for the Blind, CNIB, which still exists today. They do really great work.
Nice.
Additionally, the lack of coordinated pediatric care during the explosion was noted by a surgeon from Boston called William Ladd. His experiences inspired him to pioneer the field of pediatric surgery in North America.
Nice. Thanks.
The Halifax we love pediatric surgery. Like when you break your arm, falling out of the car because you're pissing around.
I did that.
We should do an episode sometime on your injuries from doing things that you weren't supposed to be doing.
There's only 2.
Well, you did get a tetanus shot that one time because a mouse bit you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we should have a Sinister Sisters After Dark episode on childhood trauma. Or whatever. Anyway. The Halifax explosion also sparked various health reforms, particularly in public sanitation and in maternity care.
Cute.
The trauma of the event suppressed the memory for many years. And it was actually after the first anniversary commemoration, there were no official commemorations until the 50th anniversary in 1967.
Jeez.
And then again, there was nothing for like many years. Since then, monuments and memorials have gradually emerged, including the Halifax North Memorial Library and the Halifax Explosion Memorial Bells on Fort Needham Hill. Other tributes include neighborhood monuments, mass grave markers, and a memorial book listing the victims' names. The Halifax Explosion has also been fictionalized in literature, as we mentioned at the tippity top of the episode.
Yeah.
Also, other than in children's books, it was featured in the novel Barometer Rising by Hugh MacLennan and Robert McNeil's Burden of Desire. Film adaptations and a mini-series such as Shattered series The Halifax Explosion have been created, although some have faced criticism for inaccuracies. The explosion also fostered really warm relations between Halifax and Boston, and Halifax now sends a Christmas tree every year to Boston as a gesture of gratitude.
That's cute.
I know. I love when cities do that.
Yeah,
like
it's
how
cute.
the Netherlands send like thousands of tulips every year to the Canadian federal government for thanks for
liberating
I think
them.
the Hill battle. What was that called?
Vimy Ridge.
Vimy Ridge, yeah. I was like, Dad is gonna roast me for not knowing
The
that.
Hill battle.
Vimy Ridge, the Battle of Vimy Ridge.
Vimy.
The Nova Scotia Archives also has like a collection of personal stories and accounts from the day, and like letters and diary entries and stuff. So, didn't have time today to read through some of them like on the episode, but they are really interesting. So I'm going to link them down below if you want to do some more like reading, you want to hear some more personal stories, personal effects of the day, because to me that's always the most fascinating piece of history, is like what happened to the people who survived and
just the
what they went on
people,
to do.
right?
Yeah. And a lot of the stories, of course, because it was in the middle of a world war, are from like women and children. And so that's also an interesting perspective on a historical event as well, because we so often hear from men, which isn't a bad thing, but it is nice to hear like stories. Well, nice isn't the right word, I suppose, but like the stories of people, like they were walking to school when it happened, or they were with their mom. And this one, it was actually a news article that I read. His mom was like bathing his baby sister, and the blast shattered the glass in the bathroom, and because he was just the right height, it just hit him kind of in the back and didn't actually like really injure him in the way that it would have if he would have been a little bit taller, would have hit him in the head, right, or the face. So just things like that are really interesting, and help us to remember that history happened to somebody and there was a human impact to it. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it from me today. Anything from you, Miss Shrimp?
No. What's the Dear Canada book called on this? It's like Letter Halifax.
Called No Safe Harbor, the Halifax Explosion Diary of Charlotte Blackburn.
Yeah.
I kind of want to read it again and just like see how it is. But I feel like last time we talked about it, I looked for it at the library and my library didn't have a copy. So
hello, rude.
Yeah, but you can order it on Amazon. So
we love that.
Maybe I'll buy the Kindle version.
They had like ribbon bookmarks in them. Those books.
Yes.
I used to like
Yes,
those.
that was fantastic. Because they're supposed to be a diary, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of them. Maybe I'll just like go on a middle grade reading spree.
Why not?
Why not? I'm currently reading the memoir from the uh, victim in the Brock Turner case.
Oh yes, Chanel.
Yeah, Chanel Miller. It's called Know My Name. Very good so far. So
Very good. Yeah.
yeah, I've been trying to incorporate some more non-ficky into my reading,
Yeah.
but it's got to be interesting. Jeanette McCurdy's memoir or whatever autobiography is also really good. So
I've heard that.
yeah, like very good,
I
written
don't.
like a novel.
I don't like books like that. I can't. Care.
I feel like you could probably for that one. You should give it a shot.
No, I tried reading One Direction's like biography, and if I care
Yeah,
about anything, it's One Direction.
yeah.
I couldn't do it.
But if it's like written like a novel, like a fictional novel, the Jeanette McCurdy
Maybe.
one is, I think.
Maybe.
Anyway, some book recs for the fam.
Woo!
Woo!
Okay.
But thanks, friends, so much for listening,
Yes.
for putting up with us. We've been a bit flaky on the upload schedule lately, but we appreciate you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye.
You can check us out on all the places down below. Links are there. And we will catch you next week for
We
another
will indeed.
episode.
True Crime Tuesday next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.